American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Scientists in Pennsylvania say they are making some progress with a potential coronavirus vaccine. Tanya J. Powers has more.
Researchers at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine say they're testing a potential vaccine against the coronavirus in mice and having some success. They say the vaccine has produced antibodies specific to the virus, which could be used to neutralize it. Dr. Louis Falo is the dermatology chair at Pitt's School of Medicine.
Once we get approval from the FDA, we will be ready to start human safety trials. We are speaking with the FDA now and hope to move this process along as quickly as possible.
The tests involve a fingertip-sized patch and use the previous experience the scientists have had dealing with SARS and MERS outbreaks. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Meanwhile, the COVID-19 pandemic reaches a grim milestone. Evan Brown reports.
More than 1 million cases of coronavirus infection are now confirmed worldwide, according to published statistics, and the number of people dying from the disease now exceeds 50,000. About a quarter of all cases are in the United States, which saw its death count jump by nearly 1,000 between Thursday and now. 4 out of every 10 American cases are in New York State, which is expected to surpass 100,000 cases by tonight. Alaska is the state with the least number of cases, though the U.S. Virgin Islands is the U.S. territory with the lowest incidence. Eben Brown, Fox News.
An immigration enforcement advocacy organization is disputing the claims of Open Borders advocates who say that illegal aliens fear showing up for coronavirus testing. Chad Groening has more.
The mainstream media continues to push a narrative that illegal aliens fear coming forward to get tested for the coronavirus and fear being deported for asking for medical assistance. But Ira Melman, who is a spokesman for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, says according to a 2017 FAIR study, there's no evidence to support such claims.
These are all scare tactics, kind of tired and worn scare tactics that they have been using for a long time to try to convince the American public that any kind of immigration enforcement is somehow a threat to people's basic rights or a threat to public health and safety.
And Melman says during this COVID-19 crisis, it is as important as ever to protect our borders.
When you have people coming into the country illegally under any circumstances, you don't know who they are, you don't know if they have communicable diseases, and that is one of the important reasons why we need to have borders that are enforced, and obviously all the more so at a time of a global pandemic.
Melman says the study showed that in 2017, the presence of illegal aliens cost the U.S. taxpayers in excess of $160 billion annually. I'm Chad Groening.
A Christian organization for boys is calling for a special family get-together. Charlie Butts explains.
Trail Life USA is an outdoors adventure program for boys and young men with a strong Christian emphasis. Mark Hancock heads the organization, which is calling for a COVID-19 lockdown. In other words, a national backyard campout April 17th, in which families pitch a tent in the backyard and the entire family participates in activities.
It allows families to just get outside, enjoy the outdoors together, and to create memories. For kids, this time that we're in right now can be confusing and be full of anxiety, but this is an opportunity for them to look back on this time and say, wow, that's the night that we all camped outside.
The Trail Life USA website has all sorts of ideas for activities, recipes for outdoor cooking, and families can upload videos and pictures of their own fun night. For those who don't have a backyard or camping equipment,
if a family doesn't want to, they don't have a tent or the sleeping bags, they don't want to invest in that, they can just make a fort out of furniture and a tarp or whatever. They can create something in the backyard or even inside if the weather's bad.
Hancock says it's a time when cabin fever sets in, and April 17th will be a good time for all, even if it is just in the backyard. And it'll provide an opportunity for the entire family to be active, together. I'm Charlie Butts.
American Family News is available online at onenewsnow.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Welcome to the Claudio Reilsono Show on ClaudioReilsono.com, brought to you by Aspire Pediatric Therapy and Roscoe Hearing and Allergy Care Center. Claudio will be speaking to sports legends from the 70s, 80s, and 90s about their careers, business, and what they're doing now. He will also hold roundtable discussions with some old friends about trending topics in the world of sports. And now, here's Claudio.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning into the Claudio Reilsono Show, brought to you by Roscoe Hearing and Allergy Care Center and Aspire Pediatric Therapy. As always, I want to thank Rick Mitchell for the introductions and my fantastic producer, Adam Zaloof. Today's guest, Adam Mendler, I respect him and admire him for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is he does so many different things. He is the CEO of the, I'm going to pronounce this right, I just asked him how to say it, the Veloz, help me out here, Adam, I just asked you, the Veloz Group, right?
You got it, you nailed it.
Okay, the Veloz Group, where he also co-founded and oversees ventures across a wide variety of industries. He's also a speaker, a blogger, has a podcast. The podcast is great. It's the 30-Minute Mentor. Again, he's a contributor to Huntington Post, Forbes. He's done some work with Sports Illustrated, Fox. You know, he's everywhere. And Adam, thank you so much for being on the show. And I also appreciate you having me on your blog, which we'll talk about a little bit too. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Claudio, thank you for having me. I'm fired up to be here.
All right. Question number one. I read a lot about leadership. I study it, and I am kind of critical of a lot of leaders. But who are some of the leaders that you've studied over the years, and what do you think the difference, a two-part question, again, who have you studied, and what is the difference in leadership, say the leaders from 20, 30 years ago and the leaders of today in any respective business?
That's a great question, Claudio. And there are leaders you study, and then there are leaders that you have the privilege of getting to know. And one of the things that I've been very fortunate in the work that I do is I've had the opportunity to interview hundreds of America's top leaders. So a lot of the leaders who people will read about in magazines and newspapers and on the internet are people who I've had the chance to go one-on-one with and talk to them about leadership and talk to them about their leadership journey and their best advice. And there are good leaders, there are bad leaders in every industry. I know some great ones. I know some really bad ones. I know some notorious leaders who have led companies that led to the economic meltdown. And I've learned a lot from both. What I would say is leadership has changed, in my view, a lot. A lot of the interviews a lot of the leaders who I've interviewed say that leadership really hasn't changed, that the principles of leadership were the same 50 years ago as they were 20 years ago as they were today. I understand that argument. I understand that perspective. I think there's something to that. I think a lot of the core principles of leadership are eternal, but I do believe that leadership has changed a lot over the years. And Claudio, given that you're a huge sports guy, I'm a huge sports guy, I would imagine many of your listeners are really into sports. You don't need to look any further than leaders in basketball or in baseball or in football. And when you look at who's coaching, what we could just talk about basketball. I mean, Bobby Knight was the most successful college basketball coach of his day until he wasn't, until he got run out of Indiana, until he couldn't get another job coaching college basketball. Certainly not at a major, powerhouse college. Who is the most successful coach in the NBA today? You can make a case that it's Brad Stevens. And Brad Stevens is the antithesis of Bobby Knight. He doesn't yell and scream at his players. He doesn't berate them. He inspires them by being on their side, by explaining to them what they need to do to win, what they need to do to succeed, by putting them in the best position possible. And I know we'll go a lot deeper into it over the course of your show, but that's just one example of how leadership has evolved. I mean, we can talk about it in baseball and in football, but I hope that at least gives a flavor for, how I try to approach it.
I knew this was going to happen. You and I spoke a few weeks ago, and we said we were going to talk about a lot of different things, and I can see that's going to be the case. I didn't have this question written, but you mentioned Bobby Knight and Brad Stevens. How about if Bobby Knight's style obviously would rub a lot of people the wrong way, but if you were the general manager who hired a Bobby Knight, wouldn't it be smart to get players that would want that kind of discipline, that would want that kind of push? And again, what's the saying? Round peg in a square. Round peg in a square hole. I mean, do you think that would work in an NBA setting? And obviously, Stevens can coach both pro and college, but if you did hire a Bobby Knight, wouldn't it take a veteran team or at least a group that would want that kind of discipline, would want that kind of a coach to push them?
Well, look at John Beilein.
Right.
Look at John Beilein. John Beilein was an extremely successful coach in college. Mm-hmm. Obviously, had a great run for years and years before he went to Michigan. Did great at Michigan. Was hired by the Cavs and didn't even make it through a season. Barely made it through half of the season. And why was that the case? Because the players didn't want to play for him. His style, which worked so well in college, didn't work in the NBA. So, Claudio, to answer your question, no, I don't think that Bobby Knight's style would work in the NBA. I actually recently interviewed Rick Barry, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And one of the things Rick said in our conversation was, the style of coaching that was effective in his day wouldn't really work today because players aren't receptive to getting yelled at the way that they were back then.
Right.
You need a pat on the back today. And Brad Stevens does that. Brad Stevens does that well. Now, that's not to say that players need to be coddled and players need to be babied. And there's obviously a middle ground. And the role of a leader is to really understand how to get the most out of each and every person in your organization, whether that person is a basketball player or whether that person is some other employee. It could be, in the case of my organization, it could be a software developer. It could be someone who works in our warehouse. It could be someone who works on our sales team. It could be a customer service representative. Every person is different, and it's incumbent upon whomever is leading, whether they're the CEO or whether they're a middle manager, to really get to know every person who they're responsible for managing and understand how to get the most out of that person in a way that is going to really resonate.
A couple quotes. One of them I used on the interview that I did with you was, they won't care what you know until they know that you care. But another thing another quote that I read somewhere was, rules without relationships equals rebellion. And I think that's what happened in Cleveland. But, he wasn't that far. The NBA, at least the Cavaliers, let's just keep with them. They didn't have a bunch of seasoned veterans, guys who were 28, 29, 30, 34. They had a bunch of guys that weren't that far removed from college that really may have even been juniors and seniors in college. So why did it work for him at Michigan, but not in Cleveland? Was it money?
I think money definitely is a factor. The entire system is different in college compared to in the NBA. In college basketball, we can use the word money, but the way the system works is you have this scholarship that's hanging over your head as a player. So coach has an enormous amount of power over players. If there's the scholarship, but even more important than the scholarship, for a lot of these guys, the coach controls playing time. And if you're playing and if you're the focal point of the offense, it's playing time, it's what kind of role you have on the team, how you're featured. And to a great extent, the coach really plays a big role in what kind of contract you're going to get, what kind of pro contract you're going to get, not even necessarily an NBA contract, but even what kind of look you're going to get from an overseas team. And those guys get paid really well. In the NBA, you have your contract. You've already gotten paid. And the relationship is different at that point. You've made your money. Now, maybe you haven't made the money that's going to take care of you for the rest of your life. Maybe you haven't made the money that's going to take care of you for generations. But you've gotten paid. You bought a car, maybe 2 cars. You have, you're much better financial footing than you were a couple of years earlier. And the power dynamics have changed. So at that point, the manager, the coach, the leader needs to be able to really connect with the players who play for him. And you know what, Claudio, in college, you're a college coach. You understand this as well as anyone. I know it's a little bit different at Carnegie Mellon, but in most, certainly in every Division I college, it's all about recruiting. It's all about how you can bring in the best players possible into your system. So, coaches at that level need to really be able to connect with players. And I know you're good buddies with Coach Cal. He's an absolute master at connecting with players. So in my backyard at UCLA, Ben Howland was a very successful coach in terms of win-loss record, but he got pushed out despite the amount of games he won because there was this feeling that he wasn't really resonating with the next wave of players and that they needed someone who would. And to kind of get to that next level, it would require a different style. And it hasn't really worked out for UCLA, but that was at least the thinking. And to really succeed at any level in any organization, you need to be able to have the people who you are leading want to be there and be in a position where each and every day they're going to be giving their best effort and really want to run through that wall for you.
Right. I totally agree 1,000%. Now, do you think there are more things today to deal with as a leader than years ago again?
I don't. I mean, I don't really have the context. Leaders 50 years ago weren't dealing with coronavirus, but, they were dealing with whatever sets of challenges they were dealing with then. I think that every leader in every era is dealing with his or her unique slate of issues. And I don't think leadership today is any more complicated. I think that the rules have changed. It's sort of like in baseball. Is baseball an inherently more complex game today than it was when Cy Young was playing and Christy Mathewson and Rogers Hornsby and Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig? I don't think so. I don't think the game has really changed. Now, there are shifts and, there are a lot of things that are going on. The strategy has changed. There's DH and this and that, but fundamentally it's the same game. The rules are more or less the same. And I think kind of going back to your original question, that's one of the reasons why a lot of the great leaders who I've interviewed say that the principles of leadership have remained timeless. So as much as some of the tactics have changed and we need to communicate differently when we're managing millennials and we're managing Generation Z compared to the way we may have managed 20 or 30 years ago, we certainly need to manage differently post-Me Too. But fundamentally, a great leader is someone who can connect and resonate and relate in the right way with the people who he or she leads.
Right. Okay. I like that. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from our sponsors, Roscoe Hearing and Allergy Care Center, Aspire Pediatric Therapy, Dom's Pizzeria and Sports Bar at 502 Cavett Avenue in Trafford. Call 412-372-3667. And criminal defense attorney Eric Jackson Lurie with offices located in downtown Pittsburgh and Fox Chapel. Call Eric at 412-963-9308. We will be right back with Adam Mendler.
Spring is here, and so are spring allergies.
Are you experiencing headaches, fatigue, nasal congestion, itchy, watery eyes, ear pressure, or vertigo? You may have spring and summer allergies. We can help at the Roscoe Allergy Center in DuBois. We'll diagnose, treat, and get you feeling better. Allergy therapy could help eliminate these symptoms and avoid the hassles of daily medications, as well as the side effects that go along with them. We can help at the Roscoe Allergy Center.
Modern solutions with the care you've been looking for. Call Dr. Roscoe's office today, 814-375-0455.
Has your child been diagnosed with an autism spectrum or developmental issue? You're not alone. Aspire Pediatric Therapy has been helping families for over 10 years and has 3 convenient locations. Through love, laughter, and play, the Aspire team provides occupational speech and feeding therapy using the area's only state-of-the-art sensory motor gyms. Aspire will treat you and your family like family. Don't settle for less. Call 412-474-3566 or check them out on the web at aspirepediatrictherapy.com.
We want to welcome our newest sponsor, Dom's Pizzeria and Sports Bar, 502 Cavett Avenue in Trafford, Pennsylvania. Call 412-372-3667. Dom Pecora, great guy, great food. Make sure you tell him we sent you. Okay, Adam, who are some of the leaders that you studied that have become role models, and did you meet any of them or interview them?
Oh, yeah, so many. I mean, we can kind of spend, Claudio, I don't know how much time we have, but we can spend the rest of the interview and really the rest of the night just talking about all the great interviews, all the great leaders I've had the fortune of interviewing and connecting with and getting to know on a personal level. A leader who I truly admire, who I had on my podcast, 30-Minute Mentors, a couple of weeks ago, who I look up to is Admiral Jim Stavridis. So, I mean, he's one guy just off the top of my head who I'm not sure to what extent your listeners are familiar with him, but Admiral Stavridis is a retired 4-star admiral, was the chief allied commander of NATO. And when Hillary Clinton was running for president, she considered Admiral Stavridis to be her vice presidential running mate. In fact, he was only one of 6 people who she interviewed to be her running mate. And when she lost the election and Trump won, Trump then interviewed Admiral Stavridis to be Secretary of State. So we're talking about someone who is universally respected inside the military, respected across both political parties, which is something extremely rare today.
Right, that's for sure.
And yeah. And, you know, I've interviewed Admiral Stavridis a couple of different times. We've had the fortune to chat quite a bit offline. And he's someone who I really admire for a number of different reasons. Obviously, I have tremendous admiration for his accomplishments. But what I really love about the guy is he's very humble. He's very real. He's very personable. He's very self-deprecating. You know, anytime I see one of his posts on social media, we're connected. It's often a joke, kind of poking fun at himself. And that was something that I asked him about in my interview with him. Just sort of a sense of humility, which is incredible for someone that accomplished, a retired 4-star admiral. Almost all of the retired generals and admirals, and I've interviewed some active generals, they've all said something that I think listeners would find really interesting, which is, and they've all said it in you know, one variation of this or another, and this is actually Admiral Stavridis' way of framing it. Most people think of military leaders as like the Jack Nicholson character from A Few Good Men.
Right.
But in reality, the style of leadership to be successful in the military is no different than the style of leadership to be successful in any other walk of life. And it requires someone who doesn't yell and scream at their troops. I've interviewed a number of different generals who have said to me, I can count on the number. I can count on one hand the number of times that I've screamed over the course of my entire career. I had a retired admiral tell me, I can't even think of a single time that I've said in my career, this is an order. And those are leaders who I admire. That's a style of leadership that I admire. And interestingly enough, the really successful CEOs and founders and leaders across all verticals who I've interviewed have led in a very similar way. Fortune 500 CEOs, founders of multi-billion-dollar companies, all followed the same style of leadership, a leadership centered around empowering, not a leadership style centered around telling people what to do and how to do it, but rather empowering people to be their best selves.
Now you talk about things that you like in a leader. What have been some of the things that you've seen either working with a leader or observing them that made you cringe?
Ooh, so Claudio, in our interview that you and I did, which was awesome, you shared such tremendous insight, and I hope your listeners check it out on my blog at adammendler.com. We did a piece where I went one-on-one with Claudio, and Claudio shared some really tremendous insight and advice on a wide range of topics. And one of the things that I loved that you talked about was when I asked you about leaders that you learned the most from, and you talked about two of the baseball coaches that you had. Yeah. And you cited them as these were two of the greatest leaders that I had the fortune of being around because they were such bad coaches. Right. And I learned what not to do as a coach. And I've had bosses and coaches that have taught me what not to do as a leader. And I certainly will not name them on the air.
Oh, sure.
The air. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I had a boss early in my career. I don't know if your listeners are fans of The Office, but it's not that far from Pittsburgh, right? Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Not too far. Right.
The show is actually filmed in my backyard in Van Nuys, or was filmed in Van Nuys, but it's based in Scranton. And I had a boss who was a cross between Dwight and Angela from the show. So for those of you who are not familiar with The Office, Dwight is this just sort of totally psychotic, out of his mind, zany would be an understatement, character, and Angela is just this mean, passive aggressive. Hey, and my boss was kind of a cross between those two, and major micromanager would breathe down my neck and breathe down the neck of everyone else who reported to her, and a bunch of other people who reported to her went to management and basically said, it's me or her. Either get me a new manager or I'm leaving the company. And, they were able to reassign these people. And, I kind of, grinded it out, and it was a highly unpleasant experience, but I learned a lot from that experience, what not to do. And the key word really, and I've used this word a couple of times already, is empowering. When you have good people on your team, empower them, give them the tools to succeed, and then let them do their thing. Put them in a position to win. You should be there as a resource. You're a leader, you're a coach. Claudio, you coach baseball. You can't go out on the field and hit. You can't go out on the mound and pitch. You can't go to short and field ground balls and throw to first base. You can't do that.
Right.
All you can do is put your players in the best position possible to win, and then let them go out and execute. And, managers who I've been around who I think breathe down your neck a little bit too heavily are ones that I've learned from in trying to go the other direction.
I remember saying that to you about the two guys that I'm lucky to have had, because they taught me what not to do. The one was just, as I said in the interview. Again, you can read that interview on Adam Mendler, MENDLER.com on his blog. And also you can check out his 30-minute mentor interviews as well, this podcast. But he was just terrible with everybody. And the thing that I always say is this. I don't blame those two guys. I blame the people who hired them. I mean, what did they do during the interview process that would say, okay, I want you to be the head coach of this program, and you're the face of this program? So again, if you hire me to speak on a particular subject that I speak on, or coach baseball, terrific. But if you hire me, Adam, to work on your carburetor, don't get mad at me because I botched the whole damn thing up. I blame you for hiring me, But these guys, I will. They put me through hell. A lot of it was their insecurities, I guess. But I'm so glad looking back on it that I had that experience. I didn't enjoy it then. And like I said, they made it hell for me. And that's something that I never wanted. And even talking to some of my players, or past players, current players, whatever, they will talk about their former coaches. And some of them, obviously, they'll speak well of, and some of them they won't. I always said here's what I want, Adam. When my players graduate, when they leave me, they leave the school, they leave our program, I want them to be upset that they left. I want them to miss our team. I want them to miss me, to be very corny about it. I want them to have had a good experience playing for me. Why would I want somebody to say, man, I couldn't stand him? Or like, if we have I always say this, if we have practice at 6, I don't want them to say, oh man, I got to go see him again. And nor do I want to say that about them either. But that's the thing I cringe the most, is whenever these guys try to be tough guys or just cold, distant. They think that that's what a leader is. And by talking to you several times, I don't think that you think that is what a leader is. Being
absolutely not.
Again, now you're going to have to be tough at times. Sure. I look back at my career, the guys that I've snapped on the most were my best players, and still I'm very close to, believe it or not. But
there's tough love, Claudio. There's tough love. There's tough love, but it has to come from a place of love.
Right.
And to talk about coaching, I'm going to tell you about 2 coaches that I played for, who I also had the same experience with you. One coach was just a bad dude. He was not a good guy. He had no business being a coach. He wasn't knowledgeable about the game. He had no connection to the kids he was coaching. It was just, and he was a mean guy, and he showed no positive qualities that you need in a leader. There was no warmth. There was no knowledge. There was no inspiration. There was no connectivity. There was none of that. He was just a guy who tried to rule through brute force, which he wasn't even good at laying down. It was just a bad coach. But we've all had leaders like that. We've all had bosses like that. We've all had coaches like that. The other coach that sort of stands out to me, that I have really, I don't want to use the word resentment, because at the end of the day, it's sort of, you kind of get over the stuff at high school baseball. But a lesson that I really learned from a coach that I would say did a very poor job. He was an extremely nice guy, but our team was extremely unprepared. We were overmatched and unprepared in every single game we played. Now, granted, our players weren't very good, and the responsibility has to go to the players. I mean, every team, you can't win with good players, but the culture and the mindset and the lack of discipline, our practices were a joke. And if your practices are a joke, your performance is going to be a joke. John Wooden has this great quote, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Right. And I believe that in every aspect of life, in every aspect of business, in every aspect as a leader. And when we were in preparation mode, we weren't preparing. And when we got out on the field, we got completely destroyed every game. And, a lot of that is just kind of a byproduct of leadership. And I think that these experiences really motivate you and have motivated me to try to inspire the next generation of leaders. And a lot of my work is really focused on building that next generation of leaders and taking the lessons that I've learned from interviewing hundreds of America's top leaders, both in my interview series and in my podcast, 30-Minute Mentors, where I'm interviewing leading CEOs, founders, celebrities, athletes, generals, admirals, and, really pulling their best lessons over the course of 30-minute interviews, really trying to give people who are interested in becoming better leaders the opportunity to do just that.
And I have a story that I want to share with you, it would have been too long to put on the interview that we did, but there's a story I want to talk to you about and some things I want to ask you about that I don't have written down, but I knew this was going to happen between you and me, which is a good thing. But we're going to take another quick commercial break to hear from our sponsors, Roscoe Hearing and Allergy Care Center, Aspire Pediatric Therapy, Dom's Pizzeria and Sports Bar in Trafford, Pennsylvania, Lee Davis & Associates Legends Division Facebook page, and criminal defense attorney Eric Jackson Lurie with offices located in downtown Pittsburgh and Fox Chapel. Call Eric at 412-963-9308. We will be right back with Adam Mendler.
Spring is here, and so are spring allergies.
Are you experiencing headaches, fatigue, nasal congestion, itchy, watery eyes, ear pressure, or vertigo? You may have spring and summer allergies. We can help at the Roscoe Allergy Center in DuBois. We'll diagnose, treat, and get you feeling better. Allergy therapy could help eliminate these symptoms and avoid the hassles of daily medications, as well as the side effects that go along with them. We can help at the Roscoe Allergy Center.
Modern solutions with the care you've been looking for. Call Dr. Roscoe's office today, 814-375-0455.
Has your child been diagnosed with an autism spectrum or developmental issue? You're not alone. Aspire Pediatric Therapy has been helping families for over 10 years and has 3 convenient locations. Through love, laughter, and play, the Aspire team provides occupational speech and feeding therapy using the area's only state-of-the-art sensory motor gyms. Aspire will treat you and your family like family. Don't settle for less. Call 412-474-3566 or check them out on the web at aspirepediatrictherapy.com.
Need a celebrity for an event? Visit the Lee Davis & Associates Legends Division Facebook page. Available for speaking engagements, autograph shows, ribbon cuttings, product endorsements, and other type appearances. We have World Series champions like Jim Rooker, John Candelaria, Grant Jackson, Rennie Stedet, Al Oliver, Ken Griffey Sr., football legends Roman Gabriel, Vince Papale, Louis Lips, Super Bowl champions Marv Kellum, Robin Cole, boxing champions Donnie the Golden Boy Lalonde, Vinny the Tasmanian Devil Paz, and yours truly, Claudio Reilsono. Contact us through our Facebook page at Lee Davis & Associates Legends Division or at reilsono16@gmail.com. We want to welcome our newest sponsor, Dom's Pizzeria and Sports Bar, 502 Cavett Avenue in Trafford, Pennsylvania. Call 412-372-3667. Don Pecora, great guy, great food. Make sure you tell him we sent you.
Okay, Adam. Several years ago, I want to say 2007 or 2008, we were on our way at Carnegie Mellon that if we won this one particular game, it was going to be the most wins we had ever had in school history. I wanted that win for that group because they deserved it. It was a fantastic group. It was my first team that I had at CMU. My first team was in 2005, but these guys were, juniors at the time, seniors. And I really wanted that for them. Well, we had a game. We were down 7-0. And we made this big comeback. Take it back. It was 8-0. No, it was 7-0. It was 7-0. 7-0. We made this big comeback to tie it up. Then we had something that a baseball coach, usually doesn't have time to do, and that's think. A guy hit a double, tied the game up. and the other team called for a pitching change. So here I am. I have all the time in the world to think about a bunch of scenarios. If it goes to left field, send him because the left fielder didn't have an arm. If it goes to center field, send him. The center fielder didn't have an arm. Do not send the runner if it's hit to right field, unless it's a gap shot. If it's anywhere that he can get a glove on it quick, do not send the runner from second base because he will get thrown out by a mile. The guy has a